My name is Brad Pomerantz. I am so glad you're here today because I am really honored to introduce you to really one of my heroes. And we met from Twitter. I'm not lying. We met on Twitter. She has quite a Twitter feed, quite a Twitter following. Her name is Brianna Wu. Brianna, thank you for joining us.
It's such a pleasure. I was, when I got the media invite, it just made my day. So
I
thank you so
appreciate
much.
that. So I have to be honest with you. I knew that Brianna Wu was married to a man named Wu. So I figured, this Israel advocate, this pro-Jewish American advocate was born Brianna Goldberg. And, she's just like Brianna Goldberg and she married an Asian guy. It happens all the time. But that's not the case. Brianna Wu's background is much, much more interesting than what I thought. Brianna Wu happens to be a trans woman and she's not Jewish. So, right there, it's all kind of funny. So tell us where you're from, Brianna.
I grew up in a good old state of Mississippi,
Yeah, of course you
down home
did.
and south. I'm Presbyterian, not Jewish, but we did have Jews in Mississippi growing up. I saw how they were treated, and it's a story I've told many times. But I remembered seeing people pick on Jews when they moved on my block growing up, and
Right.
it always astonished me because I always expected people to say something, and no one ever did. And I realized that we all have kind of a responsibility to speak up in those moments.
So, Brianna, and I appreciate you saying that. You got your start kind of as an adult in the progressive movement.
Yes.
Yeah, and have been a progressive, at least identified as a progressive for a very long time.
Yeah.
You're from Boston. I'm from the west side of Los Angeles. Like we kind of know the same language. We speak the same language.
Awesome.
Um, but yet you are a trans woman who has become one of the most vocal advocates, not only for the state of Israel, but for Jewish Americans who have been struggling mightily since October 7th. Of course, we celebrate the recent hostage release, but that being said, our world has been turned upside down.
Yeah.
And you're there for us. Can feel myself getting a little teary because I think about how, it's one thing for Brianna Goldberg to support Jews, but you're not Brianna Goldberg. You're Brianna Wu. So why are you such a strong advocate for Israel and Jewish Americans?
So, when I came out 20 years ago, I've always felt a kinship with Jewish people
Yeah.
as a trans woman. But when I came out 20 years ago, I was the first person to transition at the University of Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
Deep South. I was
Yeah.
it was really, really difficult. Obviously, a lot of bigotry. And Jews were the ones that really showed up for
Mm,
me. My therapist that helped me get health care was a Jew. The person in the administration that really went to bat for me to help me, change my name in the database to get professors to treat me well, something
right.
that not all of them wanted to do,
Sure.
yet they were Jewish. And, it really, I felt a real sense of gratitude for that. So after October 7th, I really started to think through my life. And it was like, well, what would it be like if there weren't Jews in America? And I started to think through my career, like, would we be able to put together fundraisers? Would we be able to put together, like, Elizabeth Warren has not been great on Israel. I should put together a lot of, phone banking operations at Jewish houses to get her elected. What would my career have been like without my Jewish friends and neighbors? So,
And that's what's been,
yeah,
Brianna, so hard for so many Jewish Americans is look, we can say a lot of things about Jews in the 21st century, whatever. Maybe we'll get into that. But
yeah,
Jews are the original progressives. I mean,
yeah,
it was Jewish America, well, European Jews who moved to America that started the union movement. It was Jewish Americans who helped start the NAACP. It's Jewish Americans who stood by our LGBTQ brothers and sisters to fight for civil rights. And so the abandonment of so many of these folks in the progressive movement has been nothing short of, literally devastating, heartbreaking. My wife and our worlds have been turned upside down and we don't understand it. What happened?
Well, I think, I say this as one of the people who, I deeply regret this now, but, if you look at my career in Gamergate in 2014, I
Right.
really helped
Give us
set up.
a brief For those that don't know what happened in 2014 with Gamergate.
Super quickly, I rose to national prominence as one of the women being targeted by the alt-right when I was working in the video game industry. Basically, a bunch of sexist trolls hunted me down on the internet, sent me death threats, and it was a big international to-do.
Brianna, if I can interrupt for a second, what exactly, for those of us that don't know, was Gamergate in 2014?
Sure. So Gamergate was kind of the original scandal of people getting death threats and harassment online. I was one of a group of women in the video game industry in 2014, kind of talking about women's opportunities professionally in the video game industry. And it kind of ticked off the kind of fringe right anonymous crowd. Death threats, rape threats, trying to destroy my company, bomb threats called in. It was, it was stochastic terrorism, the first version of this. I rose to national prominence. The reason this ties back to your question about progressivism is this was when a lot of the language was really baked into the Democratic Party, check your privilege, the oppressor, kind of this hierarchy of oppression where you've got like white males at the very bottom, and then I suppose like a non-binary, woman of color who was a lesbian at the top.
Right, of course.
This ties into your question because Jews are considered white-coded in this hierarchy. And for whatever reason, your oppression does not count.
I don't get it. I mean, look, I know I am Caucasian. I know that. And I know that I likely in my life have benefited from white privilege, whatever that may mean. But the notion that I am not a minority, have not suffered discrimination. Look, I don't need to win the Oppression Olympics. I don't need a gold medal in the Oppression Olympics, but it is undeniable that we face discrimination, hatred, abuse, even before October 7th. After October 7th, that's a whole other conversation. So what it's like, we're not white enough for people who care about whiteness, but yet we're not of color for people who care about color. So we're in the middle. We're stuck.
Yeah.
We're nothing.
It's really, I'm saying this not to defend it. I'm just explaining.
No, you're good. You're good.
I did not understand anti-Semitism until October 7th, and I started speaking up for Israel because I get called every single Jewish slur every single day, more times than I can count.
Well, because you're Brianna Goldberg.
Right.
Everyone thinks you're Brianna Goldberg.
I feel like I have secondhand like trauma from this at this point. It is. I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand that don't hold that like normal prejudice towards Jews, just how much some people are obsessed with you and hate you, because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I've always said, and look, we're 0.2% of the entire world. We're 2% of America. And fundamentally, I think it comes down to two words: disproportionate success. We can go into it a lot deeper, but I want to talk more about other issues. But I think fundamentally, there's just a real anger at perceived success of Jews, be that as it may. That's not to say there aren't Jews in poverty, because we know there are.
Sure, of course.
But it's so I want to go back to please,
if I could just
Brianna.
briefly brag, because I want to stay on this, because I think this is where.
Yes. Yeah, it's off.
I want to stay on this, Brad, because I think this is an important topic. This is where I think progressivism has really gotten off the rails, because you have Jews who, like, if you really understand the history of Judaism in this country, how you banded together and integrated and really worked together to create this success for yourself. This is something for me as a trans woman, as I'm looking at my sisters from poverty here, I'm like, we need to be taking some notes here. We need to be talking to our Jewish friends about how they have managed to build this life for themselves. And instead, like, we choose to attack you for it. So I think this has really given away the game on progressivism. Most of us are like, look, we understand structural oppression exists. We want to help with that. But is progressivism offering the solutions? I think after October 7th, all of us can see clearly it's not. It's dividing us, and it's frankly attacking our Jewish friends and neighbors.
And let's talk about the LGBTQ movement, because every time I see Queers for Palestine, I literally want to just, like, where is the cord to pull and I can have a safe come crashing down on my head? Because
Yeah.
the reality is, I mean, I looked into this, Brianna. I mean, we know that Israel is the most pro LGBTQ rights country in the Middle East. It has one of the best gay pride parades in the world in Tel Aviv. Gay couples can adopt. They can employ a surrogate. They can have sex assignment surgery. There's no employment discriminations outlawed. They can serve in the military. Their marriages are recognized. I don't want to necessarily go after our friends in the Arab and Muslim world, but suffice it to say, we don't see that in the Arab and Muslim world, and we don't see that in Gaza.
It's very strange that it results in no loyalty whatsoever. In addition to that, if you are looking at this video and you go, oh, Brianna looks reasonably like a woman, do you know who you have to thank for that? It's one of the doctors in the United States that pioneered facial feminization surgery. His name is Dr. Jeffrey Spiegel. He's right here in Boston. Like, he made it so I can have a career where I look and sound normal and I can go about my life and just live it. He has trained more surgeons in trans healthcare
And I
than
believe
any
he's a
other
Jewish
person
American.
and he's Jewish,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you look at the people that have actually helped bring us our rights, if you look at, like, the push to get trans surgery covered here under the ACA, Jews have been leading that every single step of the way. So it's just, it's a betrayal on so many levels.
What happened? I don't understand. It's objectively, it is so obvious that if you either are gay, lesbian, trans, whatever it is, or an ally, Israel and Jews are your friends. And I'm not like, well, how do I say this? I mean, the leadership in Gaza, they're not your friends. Individual Palestinians may, I don't know. But suffice it to say, if Brianna Wu went to Gaza, I don't know if Brianna Wu would come home.
I don't
If
know
Brianna
either.
Wu went to Tel Aviv, she'd be like the queen of the Tel Aviv gay pride
Oh, that was
parade.
great. I got recognized 10 times walking down the street.
So,
Yeah.
so what happened? Why is the gay and lesbian movement so off the rails?
Well, let me just be really frank. I think in some ways it's a moral failing. In some ways it's an educational failing. Yet respectfully, I think Jews tend to talk to yourself about these issues. And for a long time, people like me have been expected to know nothing and to say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot stress to you just how ignorant I was of Jewish history before October 7th. I didn't know the Yom Kippur War or the Six-Day War. I barely understood the Second Intifada, even though I lived through that. And it's just a lot. And yet, respectfully, sometimes when y'all talk about it, it's like you're sitting in history class. So I think
look,
yeah,
we presume knowledge that many don't have. I agree.
that's right.
We talked. Yeah, I don't disagree. And I want to talk to you as a political operative, and
Sure.
I say that in the best sense about what Israel and Jews can do about their PR calamity. We'll
Sure.
get there in a few moments.
Yeah.
But I still kind of go back to this, fundamental issue, which is, you're a well-known activist. You've had a great career in progressive politics, and you've turned away from the progressive movement for us. I mean, again, I feel myself tearing up to think about it, but why? I mean, again, we're 2% of the country. Yeah, we give to Democrats, and yeah, we support civil rights, but still, why?
Brad, I was working at the organization shortly after October 7th. I'm sitting there talking to the leadership. This is a well-funded progressive organization. And I'm sitting there talking to the literal leaders of that organization, and they're telling me how they want Israel destroyed. They're telling me how they want Israel destroyed. They want a second Holocaust. I don't want to use language here, but how can any ethical person work for a side that is that ignorant that they won't think through trying to advocate a second Holocaust and slaughtering? Because it's not just the Jews in Israel that would be killed. It would be the Arabs that live there too.
Of course, 25% of Israel is non-Jewish. Arabs and Christians.
How can I work with that ethically? I did not understand who I was sitting next to. And now I do. And how can I continue that and sleep at night? This is really easy calculus. Like, I sleep great at night. I do.
Yeah.
If I looked the other way, understanding the history like I do, like, what would that have said about me?
Uh,
What I can't figure out is why so many people make that same choice.
and let's talk about the Democratic Party.
Ugh.
So, look, I live in California. We're a overwhelmingly Democratic state. I covered politics for 15 years. I know me, my Democrats. Um, I live on the west side of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I don't believe, like some do, that the Democratic Party has completely abandoned Jews in Israel. I do not believe that. I still believe, well, okay, but I still believe that the leadership is mostly there. But look, it's undeniable that the Democratic Party is floundering
Yeah.
on this issue, be it the electeds. I actually think most of the electeds are mostly on the right side of the ledger. It's a lot of the just rank and file that aren't. But look, I think you disagree with me, and I'm willing to be disabused.
I mean, look, I see the party from behind the scenes, and
Hmm.
I've probably sat in 100 meetings since October 7th, encouraging Democrats to develop a spine on this and to stand next to our Jewish friends and neighbors. And part of it is moral. Part of it is, again, y'all are the backbone of our party. If you're
I've
trying to put
always
together a phone bank, if you're trying to put together a operation of like walk in a neighborhood to go canvas, I'm sorry, it's a lot of Jewish people there, or at
And
least it is in
remember this, Brianna,
Massachusetts.
and
Yeah,
remember this, in 2024, there was only one voting bloc that voted at the same level for the Democratic ticket in 24 than in 20.
that's right.
Jews,
That's right.
Jews, every other voting bloc drifted.
So
Only Jews,
I'm not saying
70%.
I hope this doesn't seem transactional because look, the easiest thing I could have done for my career
Mm,
is keep my mouth shut.
mm.
Democratic Party, flat out, cannot survive without Jews. We just can't. And we are blowing it right now. So as someone whose rights are tied to needing a Democratic Party that can win elections, because respectfully, whatever your audience thinks, the Republican Party is not good on trans issues. Trump has rolled them back more than any other person in
Yeah.
history. I need the Democrats to be viable, and we are destroying ourselves. Normal people are not on board with this pro-terrorist nonsense.
So, look, Joe Biden, when he was president, and Kamala Harris as vice president, they were, there was some verbal language that was a little hard on Israel, maybe appropriate, maybe not, hard to know, but they've provided the most money any administration has ever given to Israel by leaps and bounds. Um, Look, Donald Trump, we congratulate him on being involved in the release of the hostages. We'll see what happens as we go from here. But I use my wife, who I introduce you to, as kind of like my focus group. My
Mhm.
wife is like a kind of a traditional Jewish woman from the west side of Los Angeles, left of center, maybe on criminal rights, a little more right of center. But she is so confused about where to turn because she just doesn't know, can she rely on the Democratic Party to stand by Jewish Americans? I mean, look, here in California, Gavin Newsom, our governor, just signed the first in the nation K-12 anti-Semitism monitor. So, things are happening that are positive for Jewish Americans in California, a very blue state. But what do I tell, my wife and, all the yentas, if I can use that expression, at the local synagogue or whatever, the local cafe or deli?
I mean, yeah, politics is downstream from culture. And this is what I would say is respectfully, I want the Democrats to win. But culturally, we have unleashed hell on Jewish Americans. And, you can't look at things like people getting assassinated outside of, Jewish political events or
Right.
Jews being set on fire, just wanting the hostages to come home and not understand it is a culture that has been dehumanizing our Jewish friends and neighbors for 2 years now and understand we have had a part to play in that. We have not denounced this where we should have, and our politicians they'll put out statements but it doesn't feel true to me.
So where do moderate mainstream Democrats like yourself go from here to make sure that the Democratic Party falls back in line? I mean, look, any country can be criticized, Israel, France, whatever it is. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that we have to be a rubber stamp, but I mean, some of the statements that have come out of Democratic electeds and activists, they're indefensible.
Of course. Yeah, I will never forget, members of the squad flat out
Oh,
denying that rape success happened on October 7th. This is what I think. In my politics, look, when it comes down to what I believe in, I think I'm a straight, old school liberal Democrat.
mm.
But I think that what October 7th has shown is that both sides has their crazies.
Oh,
And
for
we
sure.
can't ignore that anymore on the left. I truly believe I have more in common with a moderate Republican than I do with one of these fringe left communist free Palestine people.
But
So I
it's so
think,
interesting, if
yeah,
I may, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's interesting you say
please.
that, because when you say you have more in common with a moderate Republican, I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
But a moderate Republican of 2005? Because are there moderate Republicans in 2025? I mean, the current president has so co-opted the Republican Party, and it's not even like the Republican Party that I know or you know. It's like this weird, like, they're anti-free trade, which was always their issue. All these kind of, they're sending National Guard from Texas to Illinois. I mean, they used to be the states' rights party. Like, I don't even know what the Republican Party is anymore.
I don't disagree. There's a reason I don't vote for them. But I also think that for the Democrats, we've tried just being opposed to what the Republicans say and do every step of the way since the Bush era. And it is not working, and normal Americans are tired of this.
Right.
So, like Sean McGuire, I'm sure you know who he is. He's a friend of mine. He was saying some very nice things about me on
Tell our
Twitter
audience who Sean
recently.
is.
Kind of a venture capitalist at Sequoia,
Mm-hmm.
someone who's donated a lot of money. He's very much a Trump guy, but
Uh,
we're on the same page with a
right.
lot of things. I think it makes sense for people like your wife that are confused about who to stand with right now. It doesn't have to be left versus right. It needs to be
Mm.
who is normal and tuned in and who is crazy.
Normal. I mean, who
Sean
would
is more
thunk?
normal than Free Palestine. I'm just sorry, he is.
Yeah. So, speaking of free Palestine, and then we'll talk about what Israel's and Jews do from here. Where are they? I mean, we have a ceasefire in place, and the hostages are free. Like, where are they? Where are they?
It's, they're just going to continue their mission of trying to brainwash our children. I was watching Twitter just a few days ago. There are calls to literally kill not just Jews, but people that stand with Jews, all
Oh,
Zionists.
nice. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think that unfortunately, as hard as it was to get the hostages home, this was the easy part.
Mm.
The hard part now comes reckoning with the fact that 41% of people under 25 wanted Hamas to keep those hostages. I'm going to say that again because I want people to process this.
I got it.
41% of people under 25 wanted Hamas to keep those hostages.
And
in
let's
a
talk about
Harvard Harris
polling.
poll.
Let's
Yes.
talk about polling, because this is where you shine. You're a political, expert. For the first time in the history of polling, in September of 2025, we saw more Americans supporting Palestine than supported Israel, just by 1 point.
Yeah.
And if you look at whether Americans want to support economic or military aid, 39-51 against. Democrats 13 to 54 supportive of Israel. Republicans 64 to 9 supportive of Israel. It's the upside down world. I mean,
Yeah.
like my mother, when she got mad at my father, she would call him a Republican. And that was an insult. Like there were like old line Jewish Democrats from the 20th century. I mean, this is just, it's very confusing.
It's terrifying. I do think there's a risk of allowing support for Israel to become a right-wing issue. And I would urge
That
my
would be
Jewish friends and
terrible.
neighbors, don't give up on the Democrats. Let's keep the conversation going. I think we're reachable. But what I do think has happened, and this is, again, all respect to Jewish organizations in the United States, politics has changed. We don't get our news from CNN and the New York Times as much as TikTok and social media anymore. There's been a failure to really engage on those fronts in Iran and Qatar and China, and all the enemies of democracy have quadrupled down on trying to confuse Americans from left to right. So we need to start from basics. We need to educate people. What's the value of this relationship with Israel? Why does Israel get attacked all the time? Like, what is Hezbollah? Like, these are things that we need to assume American people don't know and kind of start an effort to outreach to them. I truly believe if you show them the truth, they can reach the right conclusions, because I did. This is exactly what happened to me.
But can they? I mean, look, the UN in the last 10 years has condemned Israel 173 times.
Yeah,
Syria, which had a real genocide, killing 650,000 people, they got condemned 12 times.
yeah.
Sudan, 150,000, no condemnations. Congo, a quote, genocide's going on, no condemnation. I mean, the world is obsessed with a country the size of New Jersey.
It's it's very strange to me. All I can say is anti-Semitism was real, and I think the UN is a perfect example of that. This is one of these things, like, you have to dig in so deep to understand this stuff, because just for a normie, like, non-Jewish liberal, it's hard to. You're like international cooperation is great. What's the problem with the UN? And it turns out, like, there are a lot of structural problems.
So, Brianna, I want to kind of go back to where we started and ask you so we can really dig deep into it. Why are there so many people who identify as trans, also identify as proudly anti Israel, and not supportive of Jewish Americans?
Well, I think it's this progressive trap that a lot of them have fallen into. It's like if you adopt one belief, then you have to adopt all these beliefs right next to it. But I think
Intersectionality.
intersectionality is, if you believe in, say, free healthcare for trans people, then you've got to also believe, like, Palestine is entirely innocent and,
Oh,
yeah, the people in Gaza are oppressed. But I think it's much deeper than that. I think that, trans people have really morally failed this moment. I think that, one of the reasons this issue is so salient with me, where it really sparks my soul, is I understand, or at least I have compassion for so much of the Jewish struggle here. I know what it's like to grow up different. I know what it's like to have people not understand. I know what it's like to question what I can share with the average person about myself and wonder if they're going to discriminate against me if I share too much. Like, I see so much of this struggle here, and fundamentally, what I think most trans people don't understand is our fate is going to be the exact same as the Jews in this country, because anti-Semitism is absolutely linked to trans hate, and we have. Ironically, by standing with these terrorists, we've turned some of our strongest allies in public discourse against us.
I mean, Jew hatred is the canary in the coal mine.
It
It
is.
always has been. Once you have Jew hatred germinate and fester in a society, it's only a matter of time before the next group is attacked. I mean, it's like the famous Lutheran minister. First they went after the communists, I didn't say anything. Then they went after then they went after the Jews, I didn't say anything, and then they went after me, and no one was there.
Yeah. I used to
And
think that was BS, genuinely. I mean, y'all would say
I
that,
believe
and
you,
I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not
right?
really sold on that. I've seen it firsthand, because Free Palestine, like, they go down their list of how to degrade me, right?
Oh
It's
God.
like, first you're a Jew, then you're a trans woman, then you're homosexual, and they just keep going down the list. So it's like, once you permit Jew hatred in a society, women are going to be falling behind. And more than that, Brad, this is what I really want to say. This is a time where all of us need to be quadrupling down on democracy. Because if we don't stand for the West and these democratic values that the Islamist theocratic project wants to tear down, like, it's not going to end up well for me or women or Jews or Black people or gay people. Like, we all swim together or we all drown. It's really that simple.
It really is. And I just want to say, you continue to humble me. I so appreciate reading your Twitter feed at Brianna Wu. And I just thank you because so few people have been willing to speak out who happen to not be Jewish American. You're not Brianna Goldberg, you're Brianna Wu, and you're a trans woman who is not Jewish, and you're a friend, you're an ally. And for that, I can only say thank you, thank you, thank you. Would you guess that one of our greatest allies is a trans woman? Her name is Brianna Wu. She is from Boston, Massachusetts now. And I want to thank you so much, Brianna, for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.